All right. Welcome in, everyone, to our deep dive today. We're going to dig into this whole concept of adulting, something I think everyone listening can definitely relate to at one point or another. You sent over some interesting excerpts, I think, from Sarah Knight's Grow the Fuck Up. And I got to say, I'm pretty excited to see what kind of wisdom we can pull out of this one.
It does seem to be a pretty universal topic. It definitely spans across generations, this whole adulting thing. And yeah, I'm interested to see what this source material has to offer us.
Definitely, definitely. So, right off the bat, she kind of throws up this hilarious concept, but, kind of brilliant too. Big fucking babies versus total fucking grown-ups.
Right away, she grabs your attention with those terms. I think it's effective. It really makes you kind of stop and think, huh, which one am I?
It is like she's holding up a mirror in a way. And she really paints this contrasting picture of how these two types, how they think, how they act in the world. For example, she points out that big fucking babies are often, they're needy and unreliable, kind of shirking responsibilities.
Whereas the total fucking grown-ups are, she says, they're polite, resourceful, and maybe most importantly, they're accountable.
Oh, for sure. That accountability piece is huge.
Yeah.
It really highlights, I think, what it actually means to kind of step into that maturity.
Right. And I think it makes you kind of think about what direction you want to go in, towards that total fucking grown up, ideally.
Exactly, exactly. So this is where I think things get even more interesting. She brings in this concept of GTFU and motivation. And it's essentially like what drives us to actually grow the fuck up.
Mm.
She says it comes down to two forces, reward and relief.
It makes sense when you think about it psychologically. We're motivated by, feeling good, that sense of reward, or avoiding something negative, that sense of relief. So, I mean, it's pretty fundamental to behavior change when you think about it.
I think she illustrates it so well with these examples she gives. Like, imagine this, you're at a bar, and just by being polite to the bartender, you end up with free drinks.
Right. A tangible reward.
Totally. Or, think about that feeling when you absolutely crush a presentation at work because you actually took the time to prepare. That's relief right there.
I think it really highlights how those responsible choices, they can lead to immediate benefits like those free drinks, but also long-term ones. Like in the case of the presentation, it could be a promotion down the line. So it's kind of a powerful combination there, that immediate and long-term.
Absolutely. And then she kind of throws this curveball and introduces her take on the ABCs. Forget what you learned in kindergarten, though, because Knight's ABCs are action, behavior, and consequences.
Kind of a reframing of this basic concept we all know. It's
Right.
interesting, right? She's basically saying we need to think ahead, anticipate those consequences of our actions.
And that by understanding those consequences, we can start making choices that lead to the outcomes we actually want. I don't know about you, but I find that kind of empowering in a way.
It is. It sort of challenges that feeling of like helplessness that a lot of people feel, but it also means we have to take responsibility, right?
Definitely own those choices.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of taking control and shaping things,
Yeah.
she's a big believer in the power of good habits. She argues that, those small everyday actions, they can have a huge impact in the long run.
Oh, habits are incredibly powerful. If we create those positive routines, it's like we're automating those good actions, which frees up our minds to focus on other things. And those small changes, they really can lead to big results over time. It's amazing.
And she uses these super relatable examples too. Things like turning off the lights to save money,
Right.
right? Or, imagine dusting regularly to impress a date.
Practical stuff.
Yeah, and checking your bank balance often,
Yeah.
to avoid those dreaded overdraft fees. These seem like little things, but man, they add up over time.
And it kind of breaks it down into manageable steps, right? Instead of this big, overwhelming idea of being responsible, it's like, okay, just start with turning off the lights.
Totally. Okay, now let's switch gears a little bit. She talks about self-awareness, which is huge. And she does it in this really interesting way. She asks this question: do you have something to tell me?
It's a good question. I mean, it really makes you kind of stop and think. It encourages honesty, that introspection, to just kind of check in with yourself.
And sometimes that can be uncomfortable, right? But
Yeah.
that's part of the growth, too.
For sure. And
Yeah.
she even offers a little three-step process to get a clearer picture of our emotions. Like, okay, first, identify how you feel. Then try to understand why you feel that way. And finally, figure out what you want to do about it.
I love that. It breaks it down into manageable steps.
Right. And I think it also shows that this self-awareness thing, it's a skill. It's not something we're just born with. It's something we can practice and get better at. And when you get good at it, that awareness becomes the foundation for better communication and relationships.
Couldn't agree more. Now, once we're kind of in touch with ourselves, she stresses the importance of integrity. It's not enough to just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk, as they say.
Right. It's about actually living by those values. If we say one thing but do something else, we lose credibility. That trust is broken.
Exactly. Then she dives into a topic that can be kind of difficult to discuss, but it's just so important.
Mhm.
And that's privilege. She highlights how our unconscious biases, they can really shape our behavior. And, she really underscores the significance of acknowledging, the advantages that we might have.
It's good that she brings this up. It forces us to kind of look inward, examine our own assumptions, to consider how our experiences might be different from others, right? And to realize those differences might be based on factors that are totally outside of our control.
It's a good reminder that this whole adulting thing, it's not just about managing our lives. It's also about understanding how we impact others and working to, create a more equitable world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our own individual journeys are part of a larger system. And we have a responsibility to make that system a better one. And, talking about impact, Knight also dives into this idea of self-control, but
Hmm.
she frames it in a way I think is really unique. She talks about politeness, but like not just as good manners as a strategic tool almost.
Now, that's an interesting way to think about it. It's not just about being nice to be nice. There's something more to it.
Right. It's about using it to your advantage, like,
Mhm.
leveraging it to kind of influence situations, build relationships, that sort of thing.
Okay, can you give me an example? Like, what does that look like in real life?
Sure, sure. Think about, you're at work and you're competing with a coworker for a promotion. You could still compliment them on their presentation, even though you're rivals.
Okay, okay.
That act of kindness, they might be more inclined to support your ideas later on down the line.
So you're kind of building that goodwill, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an investment in future interactions.
Exactly. And I mean, you can apply this to so many areas of life. Just think about it. Showing up on time for things, that shows reliability, respect, it builds trust. Offering to help someone with a task, even if it's not your job.
Creates that reciprocity, right?
Right, right. So she's saying, kindness, it can be a really powerful strategy.
I like that. And then she takes this concept a step further, and I think it's so smart with her communication tips. She lays out this method called CAPR. It stands for calm, poised, articulate, and respectful.
Love a good acronym.
Me too. So helpful. So what's the idea behind this CAPR approach?
It's all about like mastering how you deliver a message, how to do it effectively, even when things get a bit, challenging. By staying calm, you don't escalate the conflict. Being articulate, well, that makes sure people actually understand what you're saying. And respect, maintains everyone's dignity, keeps it civil.
It's like a recipe for avoiding those unproductive arguments, the ones that just go round and round and never get anywhere.
Exactly. It's all about, de-escalating conflict, fostering understanding, really increasing your odds of a positive outcome. And then, just to really hammer home this point about respect, she adds this hilarious question. Do you kiss Beyonce with that mouth?
Oh, I love that.
It's a memorable way to make us think, right? Choose your words wisely. It's about treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are, what their position is, any of that.
I think it's a really effective way to say, hey, being rude, it's never a good look.
It's true, and it can backfire. You can damage relationships, hurt your career. I mean, it just makes life harder.
She also addresses this thing we all do,
Yeah.
complaining, which, I mean, we're all guilty of it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But she distinguishes between like venting and just being chronically negative.
Right, right. There's a difference between expressing frustration, which can be healthy, and just constantly dwelling on what's wrong. Venting, it can be a good way to let off steam, but if it becomes a habit, it drains your energy and it pushes people away.
It's true. It's like misery loves company, but nobody wants to hang out with a constant downer.
Exactly. And it can be bad for us too. Keeps us stuck in that negative mindset, right?
Right.
Makes it harder to see solutions, appreciate the good stuff.
So how do we break free from that cycle of negativity?
Well, she has this two-pronged approach. First, pay attention to how much you're complaining. If you notice it's constant, make a conscious effort to shift gears. Second, cultivate gratitude.
Yeah.
Like spend time each day appreciating things, no matter how small.
I love that. So simple, but powerful.
And this whole idea, it extends to our relationships too. She talks about the importance of boundaries, respecting our own limits and the limits of those around us.
Boundaries, yeah, it's about protecting ourselves, our emotional well-being, right?
Right. Boundaries help us define, okay, what am I comfortable with? What's not okay for me? Helps us create safety and autonomy in relationships.
I like that. So can you give me a concrete example? What would that look like?
Sure. I mean, it could be something as simple as saying no to something, if you don't have the time or energy. Or it could be setting aside time for yourself, even if it's just a few minutes each day. Or having an honest conversation with someone, a friend or family member, about a topic that's off limit.
And communicating those boundaries clearly, right?
Yeah.
Making sure they know.
Absolutely. And being willing to enforce them, when you need to. It's not always easy, but it's so important for healthy relationships.
It is. So then she goes on to emphasize the importance of responsibility. And she breaks it down into these two key things: independence and resourcefulness.
It's all about being able to take care of yourself, handling challenges, finding solutions, and not always having to rely on others.
I love that. And she sums it up with this motto: just do it yourself.
So
It's a
good.
call to action, right? To take ownership, be proactive.
And she has these anecdotes, about people who really embody this. Like she talks about her roommate who had to come up with a Halloween costume last minute, and she just used stuff she had around the house.
Being creative, thinking on your feet, not letting those limitations stop you.
Exactly. And this whole resourcefulness thing, it goes for taking care of ourselves too, physically, mentally.
Self-care is so important.
It is. It's essential. Knight says that by caring for ourselves, we can actually take better care of other people.
She wants us to find what works for each of us. Maybe it's exercise or meditation, spending time outside, or just making sure we're getting enough sleep.
And recognizing that self-care, it's not selfish. It's essential. And there's no one right way to do it. Everyone's different.
Along with self-care, she stresses being dependable.
Mm.
She says it's like a cornerstone of strong relationships and a key ingredient for success in so many areas of life.
Being dependable, it means you're reliable, you keep your promises, you show up, both for yourself and for other people.
Makes sense. She really highlights some practical skills, too, like planning, managing your time, setting realistic expectations.
And she uses this funny phrase, maybe you should have thought of that before we left the house, to highlight what happens when you don't plan. It's a lighthearted way to say, hey, it's important to be prepared.
I've definitely been there. A little bit of forethought would have saved me a lot of stress.
Being proactive rather than reactive.
Right.
Right. Thinking ahead. Having systems in place.
So smart. And finally, Knight tackles this topic of accountability. Owning up to our mistakes, making things right with a genuine apology.
Accountability, it's essential. It's how we grow, how we maintain healthy relationships. It's taking responsibility for the things we do, both the good and the bad.
She gives us these practical tools, like the liar-liar table, which basically helps us, swap out those weak excuses for genuine remorse.
It's about moving past getting defensive and seeing it as a chance to learn.
And speaking of learning from mistakes, there's the reverse ABCs. It's an exercise she describes, helps you break down errors and really understand what happened.
It's a great way to figure out, why you made a certain choice, what the consequences were, how to avoid repeating it.
So it's like turning setbacks into opportunities to grow.
Exactly. It's having that growth mindset, knowing every experience, even the bad ones, they have something to teach us.
Okay, one final element that really stood out to me was her emphasis on this idea of stepping up, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, it's a call to action to really take ownership of your life and to find ways to contribute to the world in a way that matters.
She uses this example of cleaning your room, but it's a metaphor, right? It's about taking responsibility for your actions, understanding how you impact others.
It's about creating order in your own life and then extending that sense of responsibility outwards to your relationships in your community.
It's understanding that we're all interconnected, that even small things, acts of kindness or responsibility, they can make a difference.
Exactly. It's about seeing yourself as part of something bigger, knowing that the choices you make have an impact.
This has been such a great exploration of Knight's approach to adulting. She blends this humor, practicality, and just some really insightful observations. It's an honest take on what we all go through.
Definitely a valuable resource no matter where you are on this whole adulting journey.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Grow the Fuck Up, what key takeaways are you walking away with? What are you thinking about applying to your own life? One thing I really appreciate about her approach is this. She gives us permission to be imperfect. She acknowledges that we're all works in progress, and it's okay.
It's refreshing, isn't it? I mean, there's so much pressure out there to have it all figured out, to present this image of perfect adulthood, and well, it's just not realistic. We're all learning and growing and changing all the time, right?
It's like she's saying those moments when we stumble, when we make mistakes, those are actually valuable. They're opportunities to learn and get better.
Absolutely. It's how we develop resilience, how we learn to solve problems, refine our approach. It's all part of building those essential adulting skills.
Right, so maybe growing the fuck up isn't about, like, reaching some perfect state of being. Maybe it's more about embracing the process, the whole messy, imperfect process of becoming our best selves.
Oh, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's a journey, not a destination. And along the way, well, there are going to be ups and downs, unique experiences that shape us, help us discover our full potential.
Exactly. And approaching that journey with a sense of curiosity, willingness to learn, and, maybe a little bit of self-compassion along the way. It makes all the difference.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, we're all navigating this complex terrain of adulthood, the highs and lows, the triumphs and the setbacks. And I think when we share our experiences, support each other, it makes the whole journey a little bit easier, maybe even a little bit more fulfilling.
It's in those moments of shared vulnerability.
Mhm.
That's where we find the strength, not just to survive, but to thrive. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Grow the Fuck Up, what are some of the key insights you're taking away from this? What are you excited to implement in your own life?
For me, it's the emphasis on personal agency, the idea that we have more control over our lives than we often realize. We have a choice in how we respond to challenges. We can develop habits that support our goals. We can create a life that really aligns with our values. It's empowering. What about you? What really resonated with you?
Oh, I was really struck by the power of self-awareness and the importance of building those positive habits. I think I'm going to be more intentional about, checking in with my emotions, working on those just do-it-yourself skills, especially when it comes to things I tend to put off.
Those are great takeaways. And remember, consistency is key. Even small actions, when done consistently, can lead to amazing changes over time.
Absolutely. Before we sign off, let's kind of condense some of the wisdom we've uncovered here. A little 10-point summary for our listeners, if you will. So here we go. Embrace maturity and responsibility. Strive to embody those qualities of a total fucking grown-up.
Love it. Number two.
Seek reward and relief. Recognize the positive outcomes of adulting, those tangible benefits, but also that peace of mind that comes with it.
Right on. What's next?
Master the ABCs. Understand that link between actions, behavior, and consequences so you can make choices that lead to what you really want.
Makes sense. Number four.
Develop empowering habits. Make those positive actions automatic so you can streamline your life and just feel better overall.
Excellent. And number five.
Cultivate self-awareness. Take the time to honestly assess your emotions, your needs, so you can communicate effectively with others.
So important.
Okay.
What's number six?
Act with integrity. Make sure your actions match your values and remember to acknowledge any privilege you might have.
Couldn't agree more. Seven.
Harness the power of politeness. Treat others with respect, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it can actually be a strategic advantage.
Smart. What about number eight?
Communicate clearly and respectfully, especially in tough situations. Try to stay calm, poised, articulate.
Great advice. Nine.
Set healthy boundaries. Respect your limits, respect the limits of others to foster those healthy, sustainable relationships.
Love that. And finally, number 10.
Embrace responsibility. Be proactive, be resourceful, be self-sufficient. Take initiative in your life and in your community.
Fantastic. What a great distillation of Knight's message. It really encourages us to approach adulthood with intention, a growth mindset, and a whole lot of self-awareness.
It really does.
Mm.
Well, it's been such a pleasure exploring this with you. To our listeners, we hope you feel empowered, maybe even a little inspired to embrace your own unique adulting journey.
And hey, maybe a little more prepared to navigate the bumps in the road with grace, with humor, and with a sense of purpose.